So welcome back to the channel. If you are a car owner or you know someone who's a car owner, I think this might be the most important video you're going to watch because I'm going to talk about parking charge notices and parking fines. Now, all over the UK, I'm seeing on Facebook groups where people are moaning about parking charge notices that they've received when they've gone into council car parks and places like that. Now, these are rife. At the moment, we have councils that are giving power to private car parking companies, basically so their enforcement team can go out and issue parking charges. It's becoming mad because from what I'm reading, people are getting parking tickets or parking charge notices where they've actually already paid for a ticket. In Milton Keynes, for instance, I've been hearing some stories recently where people have paid for a ticket, they've got the ticket, they've got the credit card payment, and they're receiving a parking fine, or they think it's a parking fine, but it's not, it's a parking charge notice. And in this video, I'm going to describe to you what the difference between a parking fine and a parking charge notice is, because your rights basically differ for the two. Now, these companies are getting more and more unscrupulous as to how they issue these fines. I sold a private hire business last September, which I had for 9 years. And in those 9 years, I received 7 parking charge notices from private companies who run car parks. I'm going to describe 3 of them here, 3 scenarios. As I say, I had 7. I only paid part of one of them because there's a system that you shouldn't be afraid of. These companies rely on bully tactics. They send you a parking charge notice, which is, again, is not a fine. Please don't get confused. A fine is different. A fine comes to you from the police or the council. A parking charge notice is basically an invoice from a company that runs, that is put in charge of running a private car park. Okay, so, and you have various rights. Now, basically, that parking charge notice is an invoice because that parking charge company says you have breached the terms and conditions when you enter their car park. Either you've overstayed your welcome or you've parked, not properly between a marked bay, and they'll give you tickets for all sorts of things. People are getting so stressed over these and losing so much sleep, and it is so unfair. Let me describe the 3 scenarios I had. The first one I got was back in 2017. I went to Stansted Airport, just off the M11. I was early to pick up a flight, pick up passengers from a flight. So I went into there's an area where you come off the motorway and you go into a McDonald's. There's a McDonald's restaurant there, and there's a Starbucks. Now, you enter via one road to go to the 2. If you park in the Starbucks car park and go into McDonald's, you get a ticket. And now, in these days, they've got cameras that watch you going from Starbucks to McDonald's. Nobody approaches you. You just get a parking charge notice in the post. And it's usually for 60 or 80 quid if you pay within 14 days, and it goes up after that point. This particular day, I went into going to McDonald's. The McDonald's car park was full. So I went past the entrance and went into Starbucks. Parked in Starbucks. As I'm walking out of Starbucks, obviously going towards McDonald's, this guy in a high-vis jacket said to me, "Are you going to McDonald's?" And I went, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Okay, well, I'm going to give you a parking fine because it's illegal to park there." So I said to him, "Well, let me just explain 2 things to you. Firstly, you're not going to give me a parking fine, you're going to give me a parking charge notice. And secondly, there's nothing illegal about what I'm doing. It's a private car park, therefore it's a civil matter." So anyway, he tried to argue with me. So I said, "Look, I'm going to McDonald's, fine." So I went to McDonald's, come out about 15 minutes later, and there was a parking charge notice on my windscreen. So I said to him, "What's this?" And he did say to me, "Oh, I told you I was going to give you a fine." I said, "Look, I'm not going to go there again." I said, "It's not a fine." Anyway, I noticed on his lanyard, he'd got a lanyard on, and there was no name, it was just an operative number. But he'd got a camera beside this lanyard. So I said to him, "Is that a camera?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Are you recording me?" And he went, "Yes, I am." I said, "You should tell me that you're recording me." And I said, "I want your data handler's email address because I want a copy of that video." And he just grinned and smirked and basically refused it. So I said to him, "Okay, how long have I got in this car park that I've parked in?" And it was 1 hour. You're allowed 1 hour free of charge there. So he told me it's 1 hour. So I said, "Okay, it's fine." I said, you didn't ask me, but I'm now going to Starbucks because I like to get a burger from McDonald's and get an espresso because I drive. I don't like too much volume, so I get an espresso from Starbucks. So he looked at me puzzled. So I said, I'm going into Starbucks now. So I went into Starbucks, got myself a coffee, came out, and I said to him, right, there's the receipt for McDonald's, there's the receipt for Starbucks. Would you like to cancel that parking charge notice off? To which he said, yes, he would. And he tapped his PDA, and I thought that was the end of it. So 2 weeks later, I get a parking charge notice from a company called Met Parking Services. Took this out of the envelope, and it said, you know, breach of terms and conditions, blah, 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 whatever. And it looked very official. It looked, they at the time, they were using a blue and white chevron logo, which looks very much like the police. So they're trying to deceive you all the time. So I just ignored it, and I thought, well, I've got the receipt for both. I've got the receipt for Starbucks and I've got the receipt for McDonald's, both of which were within the hour. And I thought, fine, I ain't got a thing to worry about. So I ignored it. And then 6 months later, I got another one, and another 6 months later, I got another one. Anyway, over the course of 6 years, I received probably half a dozen parking charge notices. Each time the amount went up. And then eventually what I got was I started getting debt collecting letters from a company called DCB Legal, who were also demanding money from me. And now none of these companies, you'd think in this day and age with email, you would have a simple email address on the back that you can email them, and you can say, look, I did shop in Starbucks, I did shop in McDonald's, there's a receipt, end of story. No, of course not, they don't want that. On the back was a PO box number that you could write to. There was a payment link, a web payment link where I could pay the money, or there was a premium rate phone number where I could pay the money. So I just thought, right, this isn't my problem. I'm not going to get stressed over this. So I just ignored it, and I got a few more debt collecting letters. Then eventually I got a summons. Now most people, when they get a summons, they go, oh my God, you know, I've got a summons, I've got to pay it. And they pay it because they're afraid of the system. Now the system is, I'm no legal person, so I can't legally advise you, but all I can tell you is what happened to me. And this happened on the other scenarios as well, was I completely ignored it because I decided I wasn't going to waste any of my time replying to them or appealing to Poplar, which is one of the organisations that you can apply to. I'm not going to waste my time. And secondly, that if they get a response from you, they know they've got the correct address for you. Because the way they do it is they have ANPR cameras as you drive in, which reads your registration number. They subscribe to the DVLA database, although I'm not so sure that that's illegal under GDPR laws, but they do. They get your name and address from the DVLA, and then they can hound you. So basically, I ignored it, got a summons. Now this is the point I'm trying to make. You don't need to do anything. If you know you're in the right, if you've got a parking ticket, or you know that you're absolutely in the right, and especially if you've been confronted by someone, the thing to do is to take photos. Yeah, get lots of photos on your phone of the signage, where you're placed, even the picture of the person, because he took, you know, some video of me, so I took some pictures of him, and he said to me, what are you doing? I said, I'm taking some photos. You're not allowed to do it. I said, well, this is a public space, I'm allowed to do it, and you're videoing me. Anyway, I did. And so what happened was I got the summons, and I thought, right, now this is the time I need to defend myself. And you don't, if you're in the right, you don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to be answerable to yourself up until this point. And it's dead easy. What happens is you get the summons through, and on the summons, it details what you're supposed to have done. Overstayed your welcome, or you parked, in this case, parked in the wrong car park. Which I thought, fine, okay, so then you write a defence. So it was at that point, I simply wrote, I was the driver of the vehicle, such and such registration number on that particular date and that particular time. I was confronted by one of your operatives who told me, blah, 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 whatever the story was. And I said, I went into McDonald's, and then I came out and I went into Starbucks. So I basically told them what happened. And I enclosed scans of the Starbucks receipt and the McDonald's receipt and the parking charge notice that they sent, right? Okay. So then I sent that off, and then what happens then is you enter what's called the court track process, where they receive, Met Parking Services receive your defence, and then they have to decide whether they're going to take it any further. Now, to issue a summons costs them, I think at the time it was about £32. So they have to pay £32, to issue the summons, which is out of their pocket. So they're taking a gamble. They're going to be taking a gamble, thinking to themselves, do we spend another £32 to try and get this person to pay? Again, it's relying on all the bully boy tactics, you know, the threats of CCJs and, you know, bad credits and all the rest of it. And as I say, most people, when they get these, they go, oh, I better just pay it. It's easier to pay it because we haven't got the time anymore. Okay, so I thought, no, I'm not going to do it. So I sent the defence off. They enter the court track process. Then you get a letter from the court that says, and again, please don't be afraid of any of this. It's just paperwork. You get a letter from the court that says it's entered the court track process. Would you like to mediate? So you get a chance to mediate. Okay. So what it means is you then, a date is set. You need to be there for a phone call. Someone from the court rings you and says, reads the outline of the case that Met Parking Services are looking for you for, it was about £280 it got up to at the point. They want £280 off you. Do you want to enter a mediation where you can say, yes, I'll offer so much? They then go back to Met Parking Services and they say, he's offered so much, would you accept it? And you basically negotiate a price. And I said to them, no, I'm not going to go into mediation because I've done nothing wrong. I don't owe them any money, which was different on another one that I did, which I'm about to explain in a second. So they go, you send that back off to them, and I didn't hear any more. But there was a date set in the court, so they have to then pay another £27, it was at the time, to book the court slot, apparently. Now, the court slot was for like 2.5 months' time, so I put it in my diary, expecting to get a letter from the court saying you need to appear. The court case is going to go ahead and such and such. It didn't. That date came and went, and that was it. So basically, they decided that they haven't got a case to. I haven't got a case to answer. They hadn't got a leg to stand on, and it was thrown out of court. So they probably had to pay £32. They decided not to spend another £27 because I basically was banged to rights. The other scenario I was talking to you about, or I was going to talk to you about, was I went to an SO garage on Southern Perimeter Road, just south of Heathrow, again for my job, and you're allowed to park for 30 minutes there. So I pull into the facility, and there's some parking spaces on the left, opposite side to the shop and the kiosk. So I reverse into a space there, and I set my timer on my watch for 25 minutes, on my phone for 25 minutes. So I can go into the facility, I can have something to eat, something to drink, a cup of coffee, stretch my legs. When my alarm goes off, I know that I can leave the premises within the allotted 30-minute time. Because that's the rule, they're the terms and conditions, so you stick to those. So my alarm went off, and I went out to the car, and I was blocked in by 3 or 4 heavy goods vehicles that were waiting to queuing for the heavy goods vehicle pump, and I couldn't get out. I said to one of the drivers, I said, could you just reverse up, please, mate? I said, I need to get my car. He just ignored me, like they do. So I was stuck there for probably, I think it was about 7 minutes I went over, so 37 minutes I was there, and I thought I'm going to get a parking charge notice, and of course I did. I got one through, and exactly the same scenario. I ignored it and ignored it. It got 2 or 3 more. Then DCB Legal came on to me. Oh, debt collecting, we're going to do this, whatever. Fine, absolutely fine. So then I waited for a summons. And this takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years sometimes. So again, don't be afraid. Because I knew from the first experience that I would have this opportunity, the ultimate opportunity, where I don't need to faff around in the meantime. I would have the ultimate opportunity on the defence to write my defence. So I get the summons comes through, and I go through it, and I think, right, okay, so next visit down there, I went and photographed the area where the lorries parked. Unfortunately, there weren't any blocking the cars that day, but I took the photographs, drew on there where the lorries were, and sent the defence off. I then get the opportunity to mediate. Okay, so I said, yeah, okay, well, I will mediate, because I went 6 minutes over. So I got into this mediation call with somebody from the courts, and they outlined it again to me, and I said, yeah, that's fine. And it was about £280 I owed. It went up to that point. So they said to me, do you want to pay something? I said, okay, as a goodwill gesture, I'll pay £10, which I felt was sufficient for these 6 minutes or 7 minutes I was over, even though it wasn't my fault. I thought, I'll show to the courts and I'll show to them I'm prepared to pay something. So they go back and say, he's offered £10. Oh, no, we want 200. And I said, no, 200's not, I'm not going to pay it. And anyway, they come down to £100. And I said, no, I'm not paying £100. And they come down to the original 60, which is what the original parking charge notice was for if I paid it within 14 days. And I said, no, I'm not even paying that. I'll pay you £10. Anyway, the call ended and they said to me, they may now go through the court track process and pay the £27 for you to appear in court that particular day, which was at 2.5 months ahead. I said, fine. And once again, I never heard a thing from them, not a word. So they dropped it. So the moral of this story is that these companies are getting more and more ruthless with the way they work, okay? Now, what's happened recently is a lot of councils are taking the job away from their own traffic wardens and they're giving it to private companies that they've appointed to enforce parking. Now, I've been reading on some social media groups, mainly Facebook, that people have had tickets in really spurious situations where they've paid for a ticket, they've been parked properly in a bay, and someone's come and slapped a parking charge notice on their screen. Now, what I think is happening here is that these enforcement officers, as they call themselves, are probably on a commission, okay? So they will come along and they'll go, oh, that car could be slightly over the white line a little bit, so let's slap one on the windscreen. They've got nothing to lose, have they? They write the thing out, or they print it out on a PDA, whatever they do. They've got absolutely nothing to lose, so they stick it on the windscreen. But it's you that has all the stress and all the worry and all the sleepless nights of having to deal with that, because they know that what happens is most people, probably 9 out of 10, maybe even more, just say, oh, do you know what, I can't be bothered with it. Oh, they're saying I'll get a CCJ. Do you know, I'm just going to pay it. And that's exactly what they rely on. So what I'm trying to say is, if you know you're banged to rights with these people and you have got a ticket, you have got a credit card receipt, you have got a photograph of your car, you've done absolutely nothing wrong, then do nothing. Do absolutely nothing, because they have to do all the work then to get you to pay up. And the ultimate thing they have to do is, because they're a private company, is they have to issue you with a court summons, right, which they can do online. But this might take 3, 4, 5 years to do. So go to bed, go to sleep, and if you do get a summons, and I'm saying if, it is a big if you do get a summons in 3 or 4 years' time, deal with it then. But make sure you keep all the evidence, you know, the photographs in your phone library, or you drag them to a folder on your desktop. It's shocking that we have to do this, I know, but we do have to do it in this day and age, because these companies are just bastards. They really are. So keep it, don't worry about it, tell all your friends that this is how they're working, and don't let these people get to you. You know, it's difficult enough going through life now, especially with, you know, all the problems we've got in the country. And a friend of mine said to me several years ago, this guy had got so much vision, he said to me, all the while you have a unique number on your car, you are going to be a cash cow from the government, for the government, right? How right was he? But since then, what's happened is private companies are realising, oh, we can tap in on this, we can make some money out of these people, and they're absolutely bully boys. And of course the government won't ever stop them, or they won't ever regulate them too much, because they know that for every company that exists, they're paying corporation tax. There's VAT, I assume, on all these fines. There's income tax for all the enforcement officers that go round. So why would they stop them doing what they're doing when they're going to earn money from them? Yeah? It's just absolutely shocking. So please share this video with anybody you know who's got a car, lives in a city, because I think they need to know how to deal with these people. And as I say, I can't stop reiterating, don't worry about these things. If you know you're banged to rights, stick with your guns, wait for the summons. If you have gone, you know, a few minutes over, you might want to contest it. but you could ring, I think it's the Poplar is the name of the appeal people that you contact, but they're all run by the parking charge companies anyway. You might get off, but ultimately just leave it till you get the summons, deal with it then, and you might not even get the summons, because they're going to look at the case and say, well, you know, it was parked a millimetre over a white line, we're not going to get away with that. It's up to you, you know, the way you do it, but that's the way it worked for me. I had another guy who, I had a private hire company, I had 3 cars, I had umpteen, well, about 6 or 7 freelance drivers on and off. All the cars were registered to me. This one particular guy went out one day and he overspent his time in a car park, probably double the time he should have been there, 2 hours instead of an hour. I get the parking charge notice. He goes, yeah, whatever, so what? I said, well, look, what do you want to do? I said, this is how we deal with it. Do you want to pay it now? No, he said, I'll take a gamble. So I said, okay, fine. So he took a gamble. Then, of course, the summons came after 3 years. And I told him, I said, look, there's the summons now. They're wanting so much. So he said, okay, fine enough. So I had to take the money from his pay that I was paying him to pay it, but I paid it. So that's the other way you could do it, is you could just wait until the time comes and then pay it all in one go, because you can actually, if you get the summons and it's £280, you can pay the day before the court case and that's it, done, you know. So you're making them work for their money, if you like. So anyway, I hope that video's helped. You've probably noticed I'm in a bit of a different scenario now to where I normally am. I'm actually in a caravan in France and it's raining. We've had a really hot spell, it's raining. I'm here on my honeymoon because I don't know whether you noticed, but I've got a wedding ring on my hand. I got married 3 weeks ago. I know I'm in a caravan, I know how to treat a woman. But my wife is off, she's at a market at the moment, one of these French markets, which slightly different to most markets. We went to a market in Gran Canaria in the start of the year, which was full of tap, basically. You go along and there's a stall that sells bags, then there's a stall that sells African type masks, then there's a stall that sells skirts, then there's a stall that sells scarves, then there's a stall that sells bags again, and right the way through. And in actual fact, there was one stall that we come across, I'm not quite sure what it was, but I'm going to put a picture of it on here. It was one of these sort of Colombian type, ethnic type stands, and there was this, like, I can only describe it as a gimp mask, but here it is on the screen now. Needless to say, I didn't buy it, but I'm just saying that the market was a bit weird. But anyway, these French markets are great. You get a lot of fresh produce, a lot of the artisan people come along with cheese, wine, pâtés and all sorts. So no doubt she'll probably bring me back, it'll be a bit wet I guess, but she'll probably bring me back some rather nice wine and cheese maybe. Let me see how we get on. But anyway, hope you like this video. Sorry to ramble on at the end a little bit there. But please do share this video with anybody you know who's had a parking charge notice or even drives, because it's only a matter of time before they get one, because these companies are getting more and more ruthless. I'd obviously subscribe to the channel because I've got lots more planned. And then if you click the bell as well when you subscribe, you'll get notified when my next video is published. And of course, if you've got a comment to make, if you know any better with these people regarding the VAT element or the commission rates for these operatives, then please make a comment below, and I'll do my best to reply to you. Thanks very much for watching the video, and see you on the next one.